hello, and to thank everybody for coming out this afternoon to celebrate my dad's life. We're all appreciative. And I have the microphone at the moment because I wanted to, what I think of him when I think of him as a dad. And just wanted to share those with you. So the first story is, it's true what we said in the obituary. He knew since he was a small child that he wanted to be a veterinarian. And what would happen is my grandmother, who we called Gang Gan, would go to the fish market in Miami, and she'd bring home fish from the fish market. Except she'd have to save the head for Dad. Oh. Because Dad's favorite thing to do is to take the fish heads and do surgery on it. Poke out the eyeballs. I'll spare you the rest of the dissection details, but that was one of his favorite things to do as a child, was to dissect fish heads.
Tigers!
Woohoo! That connection will become evident shortly. So I went to University of Missouri and majored in animal husbandry. His Vietnam draft number came up. He got called up. And he went to the draft board and said to the guy, hey, I'm working on my education. Let me see what I can do about getting an educational deferment. I'm trying to get into veterinary school. I just need a little bit more time. And the guy said, okay, I'll give you a little bit more time. And the third time was a charm. Dad applied to veterinary school. He got in. He ended up graduating second in his class. And he went back at one point to thank the guy at the draft board. And the guy at the draft board said, nobody's ever come back to thank you. And I just, as his daughter, I've always loved that story. It just, that's something he'd do, just on principle. And the last thing I want to leave is just, again, a story of the daughter of a veterinarian.
Mic's off.
We can hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, okay.
This was even more notable when we were growing up in Louisiana, and I lived in Louisiana as a child, but every time we'd go out on a drive somewhere, anywhere, if he saw a turtle in the road, he had to pull over immediately to the side of the road. And we had to get out of the car and rescue the turtle, help it on its way, help it continue to the side of the road to which it was headed. We even did it for a couple of big black snakes, I think, a couple of times. But I remember him telling me, he said, it's because people aim for the turtles. That's why we have to rescue them. And his favorite story was, we were in Louisiana one time. He went to rescue a turtle, and an old Cajun guy was coming from the other way. And he stopped his truck too. And Dad scooted the turtle off into the swamp, and the Cajun guy said, you know what, buddy? You just got rid of my dinner. Dad said, oh, well, better luck next time. On that note, again, just thank you all for being here. It's really meaningful to us to have all of these friends and family and people that knew my dad here. It's just, that's the most special thing about all of this. So thank you to you all for your support, and anyone who'd like to come up and say a few words, share something. Gonna start with my mom.
I'm so proud that my family is here. I have siblings from all over the country who have flown across the country to be here, and I'm grateful. And when I told them at church how many family members they should plan on for the reserved seats, I said, 40? And I think that's what it was. So I'm grateful that we have people. I knew Don for 5 years before we got married. We've been married almost 53 years. Keep a sense of humor at all times. One story I think defines Don that I want to tell. Don never really liked parties. Never liked parties. You know, I was the social one. And we were in Gainesville. He was doing his surgical residency. And we were supposed to go to my department Christmas play. And he calls me up and he said, I can't go. I have to go do hernia repair on a Gila monster. And I said, that's such a good excuse, I don't even care if it's true. It was true. When he started his residency, he went to see, he was never an equine guy, but he went to see 500,000, this was way back, a $500,000 horse who was pregnant with a $500,000 foal, and she was in college. And they lived. When we were on Nantucket, he was the only veterinarian on Nantucket for a couple months, and he prayed for those horses every day. Please, God, don't let them catch hold. But Don got really attached to animals when he was a child. His dad died very young. His mother had 2 or 3 jobs all the time. And he had a Cocker Spaniel named Sam that he loved. And Sam was his companion. And when he was at Mizzou, his sister Barbara gave him $25 for his birthday. And so he went to Kansas City and he bought a Cocker Spaniel named Louie, who was insane. And Louie growled every time we fed him. He liked to munch on pins, needles, and lasers. He almost set our apartment on fire. And that's how I learned to love dogs. And he was, I think he was expecting to be a boy dad. He was a fabulous girl dad.
Cheers.
And he swam in a sea of estrogen with us. And he would love you.
Lucky one to marry the young Waldron. Waldron. Maybe I should have said.
Younger?
Yes.
But some of the stuff that stuck out to me about Don was the first time I met him, when I went in, Claire hugged me coming through the door. They had never met me. And Don shook my hand. And guys in the room, you know, it was a man's handshake. Don shook your hand. And that continued every time I came and left that house. Till the very end. But Don was always something that was very special to everybody. He always made you feel welcome when you came into his home. And when she came along, he definitely, you could see a spark in his eyes. And one of the things that sticks out was on Friday, before he really declined on Monday, Jennie had taken Elle to see him. And we have a video of him playing with her. And you can see how Don just knew that she was a baby. Still, even though everything was going on, he knew she was a baby and very special needs. And that was something that always stuck out. But as things went back up a little bit, as things went on, I have to tell this because this is the most funniest part of everything. One night, I think, there was some issues going on. We went to the ER. We had came back, and everybody was at the house. And I was trying to help him in bed, and he looked at me, he said, "Wes, don't leave me here with these women." And I said, I had to look at him and was like, "Don, I understand, but you gotta stay." But as it went on, you know, as a disease or neurological condition, as he referred to it all the way through, he still knew his girls. He loved his girls. He would ask about them periodically, which he may ask one of them one thing or something else. He still was very in touch with his girls. But even at the very end, Don still was a man's man. And that came forefront from the people at Brookdale. Some of the male caregivers that had taken care of him have even told us Don's a man's man. Meaning he was just one of those older men that guys you really attach to and you become very fond of. He was known as Pop to her. And today, when we walked into the funeral home, we opened the brochure and his picture was there on one of them, and she goes, Pop. So she is always going to be something special to him for sure. And hopefully we can always make it a big part of it.
Well, hello. By introduction, I'm Claire's younger brother.
The young one?
Or should I say she's my younger sister.
There you go.
But as we all heard, Don was had diverse passions. I heard a lot today that I had never heard about Don. I can tell you a lot of stories about Don, but I'm going to share 3 with you. Don, I got to know Don by his coming to Hannibal, Missouri, our hometown, for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And Don and I would talk about adventures. And we would talk about some of the great climbers in the United States, and just talk at that time. And then I moved to Colorado. I started climbing in 14, and I was kind of the black sheep, lived very far west in southwest Colorado. And, what's that? But out of the blue, Don called me and said, and this was like December, and he said, Louis, let's go climb Mount Rainier. And I was kind of the cocky, Don was 8 years older than me. And I was kind of the cocky Colorado kid. And, you sure you want to do that, Don? And so we made reservations at Paradise Lodge at the base of Mount Rainier. And we took a week-long climbing school through Rainier Mountain Guide, which is one of the most famous climbing schools in the world. In fact, we were taught by Tenzing Norgay's nephew. If you know Tenzing Norgay, he was the Sherpa on the first American ascent of Mount Everest. Well, we went through this school, and we had to learn about ice axes and crevasses and roping up, and essentially you're looking out for your fellow climber. Well, I was still kind of this cocky kid, this is no problem. But I didn't know Don did triathlons and ran marathons. That he and I were roped together, and we climbed up Mount Rainier. It was quite the day. But I wouldn't have done that without Don Waldron. And then we climbed Rainier, but the best part of that was we stayed at Paradise Lodge. And I don't know if anyone here knows anything about Paradise Lodge. It is the cathedral of big mountain climbing in the United States. Wonderful big old National Park Service lodge. And we would have breakfast every morning, and for 2 hours we got to linger and read the morning paper and have coffee together. And if you get to do that with somebody, you get to know them. And Don and I shared this love of reading these articles and then carrying on kind of a political commentary about life in general, and that's how I got to know Don. Well, we finished the climb on Rainier, we made it back safely, and then we took a trip to Seattle and Puget Sound and a place called Hurricane Ridge. And right before we were to catch a plane flight out, we looked at this ridge, and it was in the Olympic range. And if you know the Olympic range, very seldom do you ever get to see the peaks because they're always cloud covered. Well, it was a clear day, so we saw these peaks, and Don said, Louis, we're going to go out and climb that peak next year. And sure enough, we did. We climbed Mount Olympus. But what I remember about Don on that trip, of course, you're climbing up a glacier all the way. It's ice, essentially, that you're climbing up. And You have crampons and ice axes and the rope together. And Mount Olympus is known for having crevasses, which are these deep crevices in the glaciers, which you want to stay away from. So we were climbing over those all day long. Long day. We finally got up to the top. And, well, we didn't get to the top. We got about 30 feet from the top. And we could just see the top right there. And there was one big crevasse we had to cross. And I was a young kid, so he said, go up and scout that crevasse. And I did. And, you know, it was a 45-degree pitch. It was ice, so it was tenuous to get up there. I got up to the crevasse, big, wide, gaping crevasse. And if you know crevasses, it's this bright blue color that just almost blinds you. And I looked down and I didn't see a bottom. Well, there was one way across that crevasse. It's called a snow bridge. And I looked over at the snow bridge and, you know, it looked suspicious to me. It looked like, I don't know about that. So I went back down and talked to Don and another friend of mine who were on the trip. Talked it over with them, and I was the gung-ho kid. I was ready to go. Don and the other partner I was with made the decision to say, you know, it's an option to get up to the top. It's not an option to get down. So, thank you, Don Waldron. The final story I want to tell is Don also took me under his wing to go bird hunting, pheasant hunting in North Dakota. And for many of the vets in the room, you may know some of Don's partners are good friends, Sam Adams and Ed Putnam. And they were all veterinary vets from the University of Missouri. And they all had Brittany Spaniels, very well-trained Brittany Spaniels. I was used to hunting blue grouse, which used a flushing dog, not a pointing dog. So here I had to go with these three vets, very experienced hunters with these immaculatively trained Brittany Spaniels, pointers. And I had kind of a not very well-trained lab. And so I learned to keep my distance from those guys because I didn't want to flush all the birds. But we stayed with a family in North Dakota called the Brinkman family on this big, beautiful 2,000-acre ranch. And it was a mom and a son. The father had passed away. They were trying to figure out ways of keeping this ranch, so they opened it up to hunters. Well, Don and Sam and Ed found out about this place, and we kind of became the adopted family of June and Tim Brinkman. Don and Sam and Ed would tell these stories of their veterinary experience, their academia experience, just experience all over the world. And to the Brinkmans in North Dakota, that was everything. And Don and Sam and Ed would just needle each other endlessly about veterinary practices. Don was academia, they were in private practice, so there was a lot of bantering going along. When it came time to hunt, those three guys were very serious about what they did. But to this day, that's one of my most memorable experiences with Don Waldron.
Number one, right? Yeah. Mom said at one point, I prayed for your relationship with your dad every day. Because we butted heads. And we did. I thought he lived to make my day difficult, and he probably thought the same thing. But I got the lovely thing that comes when you become an adult, which is you become friends with your parents. And I've always been friends with my mom. But I didn't really become friends with my dad till probably early 20s when he decided that I wasn't going to be bailed out of jail every weekend. We were in Las Vegas one weekend for the Western Veterinary Conference, and his idea of a good time, it was my birthday, was to get a Little Caesars pizza and going home. He was tired tired of the strip and the socializing and all that. So that's what we did. We were on our way to Little Caesars. It was him and I. And he just kind of looked at me one day and he said, or when we were driving, he said, you know, Cammie, I wasn't that nice to you growing up, and I'm sorry for that. And I never would have categorized my dad as not being a nice dad. He was a hard dad. But at that point in my life, where I had reached our relationship, which is where I hope all kids get with their dads who are hard on them, was, it's okay, Dad, we're friends now. And I patted him on the back, and we were. And I think if that's not a woke, modern dad, I'm not really sure what is. But Don Waldron is woke.
And the first one was that crazy-ass Cocker Spaniel named Louie. So they came to our house. We lived at 5025 on Schoolhouse Road. I think Don and Claire at the time, I think Don was working for Rainey and Kittrell, and they were staying at the apartment complex. And they came over, I guess it was Christmas or some celebration, and Louie used to get up underneath the sofa. And when it was time for someone to get Louie out, I mean, this dog was like the Tasmanian devil. Slobber would come out and he'd, ah! And I was a young kid, it scared the hell out of me. And Claire would tell Don, get that dog out underneath the sofa. And Don would go over there and say, Louie, don't you do it. And he'd reach under there and grab him and pull him out, and the dog didn't do one thing to him. But I was like, so I tried it once, it didn't work. Exactly, he got me. I have all my fingers, but the other thing was I had a Siamese cat, and somewhere along the way they said, well, he needs to get, neutered. So I don't know how it transpired, I don't know what happened, but Don came over one day and they went to the washer and the dryer, and he told my mom, his older sister, Barbara, lay out a towel. So she laid out a towel, and the next thing he was injecting the cat, and the cat was laying there like whatever, and he neutered the cat on a washing machine. And I was like, that's the craziest thing I ever remember in my life. And then the last one it was Christmas, and everyone was there. You remember that story about the cat? It was Christmas, and I wanted a dog in the worst way, just like the girls wanted a cat. And I thought I was never going to get one. They're like, you need to go to bed because Santa Claus is coming. I'm like, I didn't really believe in Santa Claus, but I played along with it. And they go in your room and get into bed. Santa Claus is going to be coming. So I heard something. I heard this noise, and I heard Don's voice. So I got up in my bed, and I opened up the curtains, and there was Don carrying a baby Dalmatian. And that dog was the most beautiful dog in the world. But that's my remembrance of Don. He was so caring and sharing, and he would do anything for you. I do remember the other thing is I don't know about all these people saying he was like, low key and all that stuff, because he was not low key from when I was young. His leg was moving every second of the minute, and he was nervous in the services, my mom would say. But he was high strung as high strung could be. But I loved him to death, and we miss him dearly.
I can go back to when Don was courting my sister. We had a family vacation one year with the Paradise Clan at a place called Houghton Lake, Michigan. So cousins, must have been 40 or so Paradise cousins, right? And the Myers are the baby boom, 18-year range, so we had babies and we had tweens like me, and we had hot older sisters, and their boyfriends. Don was alone. Don uncomplainingly slept on the screened porch with 6 other little boys, me included, on cots on the screened porch. And think about that. I guess we're talking about the 60s, but he was along for the ride. He knew what he was in for, and he slept on the porch with us. But there's another story to kind of keep up the dog theme. And I do have to say, looking at the pictures of the family's trove and all the pictures of Don, it sure seemed like the cats won. But, again, early days, Don is visiting the family for a holiday at Thanksgiving in Hannibal, Missouri. Famous for Mark Twain and the Mississippi River. There's a park called Riverview Park, 465 acres, that overlooks the river from dramatic vistas and a high bluff. There's a statue of Mark Twain looming over a road, and then a pediment that you stand on and look down to get this river view. Don, trying to impress his father-in-law, Bill Meyer, went to the park with Don and his dog du jour, Mac. Mac was a subsequent dog post-Louis. Brittany Spaniel. Don and Bill are on the pediment. Mac's somewhere around there. And the story legend, family legend goes that Don turned and gave a command that Mac misunderstood or understood. What Mac understood was, come, and he did, and he jumped over the pediment. all the way down, past the river bluff, all the way down to River Road. Don and Bill came back telling the story that they looked at each other thinking, what have we just done? Killed this poor dog. They waited 5-10 minutes. Mac came back up the hill, shook off a few leaves, and managed to get home. But think about that as first impression for your future father-in-law. Well, I went to his hometown and I lost my dog. But Don was there for great moments with our family, was always a wonderful contributor, and survived the chaos of being one of many involved with the family of 8. So here's to Don for surviving that. In the family of 8, she was the second on the 5th. I have 2 Don Waldron stories, and I'm old enough that I can go back to when Don was courting my sister. We had a family vacation one year with the Paradise Clan at a place called Houghton Lake, Michigan. So cousins, must have been 40 or so Paradise cousins, right? And the Myers are the baby boom, 18-year range, so we had babies and we had tweens like me, and we had hot older sisters, and their boyfriends. Don was along. Don uncomplainingly slept on the screen porch with 6 other little boys, me included, on cots on the screen porch. And think about that. I guess we're talking about the 60s, but he was along for the ride. He knew what he was in for, and he slept on the porch with us. But there's another story to kind of keep up the dog theme. And I do have to say, looking at the pictures of the family's trove and all the pictures of Don, it sure seemed like the cats won. But again, early days, Don is visiting the family for a holiday at Thanksgiving in Hannibal, Missouri. Famous for Mark Twain and the Mississippi River. There's a park called Riverview Park, 465 acres, that overlooks the river from dramatic vistas and a high bluff. There's a statue of Mark Twain looming over a road, and then a pediment that you stand on and look down to get this river view. Don, trying to impress his father-in-law, Bill Meyer, went to the park with Don and his dog du jour, Mac. Mac was a subsequent dog post-Louis, Brittany Spaniel. Don and Bill are on the pediment. Mac's somewhere around there. And the story legend, family legend goes that Don turned and gave a command that Mac misunderstood or understood. What Mac understood was, come, and he did, and he jumped over the pediment. All the way down, past the river bluff, all the way down to River Road. Don and Bill came back telling the story that they looked at each other thinking, what have we just done? Killed this poor dog. They waited 5-10 minutes. Mac came back up the hill, shook off a few leaves, and managed to get home. But think about that as first impression for your future father-in-law. Well, I went to his hometown and I lost my dog. But Don was there for great moments with our family, was always a wonderful contributor, and survived the chaos of being one of many involved with the family of 8. So here's to Don for surviving that.
And my better half is a very big dog person, and we lived in Brooklyn, New York. And his dog, Spotless, was going on 15, kind of a mutt, great dog, last legs. And, we were at a stage where we had to carry her up the stairs. We lived on the 3rd floor. And she wasn't, she was living out her, final days. So it's Sunday, but it's not just any Sunday, it's Marathon Sunday. It's New York City Marathon Sunday. And we lived right in the middle of the route. Like literally we're trapped in there all day. You couldn't move for a good 12 hours. And the Spotless started acting up and going into this, having like a seizure, and it was super scary. And we were both losing it because we couldn't get to a vet. We couldn't take her to the place in Prospect Park, which is right on the route, and then the New York Animal Hospital is right on the route at First Avenue in New York City off the bridge. There was no way we could even get near it. Like we couldn't walk over there. So my first instinct was, we gotta call Don. It's Sunday morning, it's really early on Sunday morning, and I thought, I feel really bad about this. I mean, the guy probably gets buttonholed at every party he's at, asking advice for people's pets, and I'm sure that's true. But we still did, and I will never forget, he was on speaker. He was so calm. He asked a couple of questions. My better half was crying. He never does. And he basically, in just the matter of 5 minutes, calmed us all down. He pretty much diagnosed what was going on. He gave us some advice. He told us everything was going to be okay. And it wasn't until the next day that we were able to take him to the doctor, but that reassurance has just stayed with me forever and ever and ever. So, and you lived at like 6,000 feet. So I was a flatlander and I was not used to the elevation, but I was very fit and I was like, oh, I'm going. And then the word got around and everybody's like, I'm going on the 14er, I'm going on the 14er. And Lewis had to sort of tell the entire family, you are not equipped to do the 14er. There are very few of you who can do this. It is not happening. But we wouldn't have it. Don and Claire and I decided that morning that we were just going to climb up Ajax, Aspen Mountain. And I thought, how hard could this be? And I remember the first 500 yards thinking, what have I done? Because, it's just elevation, I wasn't used to it. Don, right up there. And he dragged, and you too. But again, game for anything, fit as a fiddle, amazing.
I have pictures.
What's that?
I have pictures of that. I was not sweating.
No, you were glowing. You were glowing. Anyway, thank you, Don.
Hey, good friends. I was never a runner, per se, But it sounded cool, you know, so, and Don was a marathoner, so he and I would do long runs together. We did 10-mile races together. We would travel to different venues and run races. Lynchburg was the Lynchburg 10-miler, which was a very hilly 10-miler. Distinctly memorable because you would get to the halfway point and the elite runners would be going by you very quickly and be there, not even there when you got done, they were already on their way home. But we always had conversations on these training runs, and I think you're the definition of a soulmate, right? You think, oh, it must be your wife or your spouse, someone you can really confide in, but I think a soulmate might be someone you can confide in and say things you can't say to your spouse. And I think Don and I were truly soulmates. We had many conversations, we trusted each other like brothers, wrote that book together and spent many family holidays together because our immediate families were so far away, we just connected with each other. So the Waldron and Spence would share Thanksgivings, Christmas, and our kids grew up together. And now they have their own families, which they're enjoying and they're doing great. But I just wanted to acknowledge how great a friend Don was to me and to many other people.
Meaning that I'm not family. I didn't work with Don. I didn't really know Don.
Speak in the mic.
Beg pardon? Okay, how's that, better? Okay. And I'm his neighbor 2 doors up. When we first moved down here, I'm a rather really competitive guy, and apparently Don was too. And if you know where Claire lives, that hill, there was a neighbor above me, and then there was Don, and they used to ride their bicycles up the hill and make it look like nothing, okay? So I moved down, and I said, wow, those guys can do it, so can I. Little did I know that my gearing ratio was not anything like the other two. So I'm cranking up the hill, and I see Don at the end of the driveway. He's gotten done, he's got his helmet off, and he just smiles at me. And I get up, go on by up to the house, and I'm dead. So I go down again next day, and I come back up, and there's Don at the end of the driveway again, and he's just got this smile on his face. And he just watches me go up, and I stop. I said, how do you do this? And he says, what type of bike do you have? I had a mountain bike, okay, that theoretically should be able to go up there pretty good. But this was not an electric one. This was one that he said, you got the wrong gearing. And with that, he smiled and said,
If I don't tell this story on myself now, some of the siblings will do it. So I better tell it now. Yes, thank you. It was Beth's wedding. And it was a great event, great reception. I was 13 or 14. And Lewis had a bunch of his buddies that were there that volunteered to be waiters and waitresses at the reception. And, you know, I used my charm or whatever, and I was able to finagle all the champagne that I wanted that evening. And it did not end well for me. It ended with me lying down, passed out in the bushes outside the reception hall. Don was busy loading all the wedding reception presents in the car, and I'm saying, please don't put me in the trunk with all the presents. But he was very kind and made sure, ushered me home, and took care of me until I was able to pass out in my own bed. So that's that care and compassion shown by Don Waldron. So thank you for that.
It was my first bad investment, but we maintained friendship, and we became close friends after that. And we had very competitive wiffle ball games in his backyard every afternoon after school. We'd set up a lounge chair as a strike zone, and of course the ball hit that to strike. But since the wiffle ball moves a lot, the pitcher always called the ball and strikes. And the only time we ever had an argument and almost came to blows was over a ball strike call in our wiffle ball game. I'll tell you the worst thing I ever did to a friend. But Don forgave me. When I was in basic training in the Army, he spent the summer with my dad working in New Jersey and had a summer relationship with a local girl.
Not Claire.
Not Claire. He had invited her to Miami for Christmas, and then a few days before she was to leave, he called and broke off the relationship. She was not happy. So when Don was applying to vet school, he sent my father a form for recommendation. And on the bottom of the form it had, insert 2 people you think could also recommend Don. And my dad filled it out, gave it to me to mail. Before I mailed it, I copied it. I whited out one of those people and put this girl's name and address. I didn't speak to Don until he got, maybe 6 months later, till after he was actually admitted to school. I guess he thought that was going to kill his chances. The last thing I'll tell you, I remember when Don was studying for his Florida boards. I believe he's in Jacksonville, at a motel room, prepping, and I called him up to see how he's doing. And he was highly anxious, very nervous. And I said, Don, you finished first in your class in Missouri. You don't need to be nervous. People finish behind you need to be nervous. So he was a great friend for 65 years, and we're all going to miss him.
This is a story not really so much about Don as it is about Claire. The first time we met Don, I think we'd known each other maybe 2 weeks, and we brought Don home to Hannibal for Thanksgiving, because Florida was a long way away. And we're off meeting Don, and Don who? We don't know. Eventually, Claire found out what her last name was going to be. Anyway, that was really a lot of fun. And this is another thing that's a minor detail in a way, but Don ran a lot of marathons. We published a magazine called The Michigan Runner. My husband Art with the camera over there. So ran a bunch of marathons. Don and Art get together the first time, and then, as guys will do, start to be competitive and compare notes. But all ended well when they discovered they each had identical best marathon times.